So we're here in Glasgow for the climate talks, and the biggest thing that's at stake here, of course, is the future. I like to think of myself as the young person in the room, but actually there's a new generation that I think is really providing so much of the moral context and moral authority for the talks that are going on right now. And so I'm really glad to be joining Jerome Foster, a youth advocate and accomplished climate voice at 19 years old. Do I have that right?
Yes.
So you're making me feel really, really old here. But excited to have a chance to talk with you about what's going on. Maybe I'll start just by asking you, because you've been here from the very beginning of the talks, right?
Yes.
What have these last 2 weeks been like, and what do you think is the most important thing for people to understand who maybe are following this from half a world away?
Absolutely. I think that for these past 2 weeks, it's been a mix of emotion. It's been a lot of hope. It's been a lot of ambition that we've been looking forward to. And I think we're coming to the reality that it's going to be some compromise, but we have to continue to be as progressive as possible. Yep. And in the last week, we've seen a lot of commitments from countries that haven't met the Paris Climate Accords. But in this last week, as the U.S. has come into the COP26 spaces, we've seen a change in tone and more around like leadership and how do we change the narrative around making sure that United States and high-emitting countries take that leadership role and envision what the world should do.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've been noticing in the conversations I'm having with counterparts as I'm meeting transportation ministers from other countries is there's been this appetite for the U.S. to be at the table, right?
Yes.
And thankfully a lot of warmth welcoming us back after some years of lost time.
Yes.
But there's a huge responsibility that comes with that for the U.S. to really be driving, and it's as an administration part of what we're trying to do. Whenever we're asking anything of other nations, that we're leading by example.
Absolutely.
A big part of that's transportation, right? Where we've got the need to deploy electric vehicles, but also areas where there needs to be a lot of technological growth. A lot of people have been in an electric vehicle. Nobody's been in an electric airliner yet, right? So we've got to work on aviation with a whole new sense of urgency. And then part of our focus also is to give people alternatives, which includes making sure you don't have to have a vehicle to get somewhere. That's why transit and rail are such a big part of the bill. I heard, by the way, that you have a family relationship to American Rails. You're from an Amtrak family, is that right?
Yes, my dad is a foreman for Amtrak, and he actually is like overseeing the transition for electric motors. Wow. And also works on emissions reductions for the diesel engines that they use all across the northeast corridor of the United States.
What was it like growing up with that relationship with Amtrak?
It was great. It was definitely like road trips every other weekend. Like we took 3-day train rides all across to California and just saw how great America was, and just it was amazing. Yeah.
I always thought I was the biggest train guy I knew. And then I wound up in an administration led by President Biden, who's probably the biggest train guy around. And
yeah,
so
I remember seeing him on the train when I was
really?
little. He would come on Amtrak train. My dad would be like, that's Senator Biden. That's Biden right there.
Wow.
And
so even then, he was known for that. Huh?
Exactly, yeah. He was known for it a lot.
How do you think that background shapes the work that you're doing now?
I think that background kind of frames all of our conversations here, because transportation is the foundation of how we're going to transition into a clean economy. Like, how do we transport people and make sure people are safe? And the main question has been, why haven't we and why can't we, and when will we as a world like set aside these geopolitical tensions and say, let's make proactive investments in infrastructure and transportation, and more especially transportation, because train and high-speed rail is what signifies our commitment to actually being renewable and sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, as you probably know, transportation is the single biggest sector contributing greenhouse gases across the whole U.S. economy. And it's one of the reasons why I'm glad there's a transportation day. That hasn't happened before, but to have a day at these COP talks that's really themed around transportation. So we've been at it all day with new commitments. We released our aviation plan for the U.S. that officially commits us to that net zero by 2050 goal, and talks about some of the things we got to do way before 2050 in order to be well on our way.
Exactly.
And then the maritime sector, which it's pound for pound one of the least carbon intensive ways to move goods, but because of the kind of heavy fuel oil that the ships burn, and because there's just so much of it, it's a huge part of emissions. So we committed to launching green shipping corridors today that I think is going to be really a great way to build some international energy on this. And I think it fits with what we're trying to do back home in terms of, like you're saying, right, more trains, more transit in cities too. And we're proud of the transit commitment that's here.
Absolutely.
So when you're talking with people from your generation, and I don't like admitting that I'm from a different generation than students now, but okay.
You were like running on youth for a while, like so, we were you. We were on Team Buttigieg.
So I can still claim to be the young guy-ish.
Exactly.
But look, I mean, the younger you are, the more is on the line. And one of the things that's really impressed me about the advocates and activists here is that they're really calling, I think, anybody in a position of authority or responsibility to go further, do more, precisely because there's literally not even enough time to wait for people who are in high school and college now to be in elected positions later. I mean, it's literally the next 10 years are going to be pretty make or break. But
Exactly.
how do you feel like the relationship between, I think, the very high expectations that we need to meet and maybe young people are also famously skeptical of government political action, its ability to even do anything. So how do you square those two things, and what are you kind of feeling among your fellow advocates?
Yeah, I think being a young person and also working in advocacy, and I think I straddle the two. Like when I climate striking from the White House, I saw the public frustration around climate inaction. And I used to intern in Congress for Representative John Lewis. And literally I saw how people were pushing from the inside, trying to make change happen. And I think that really what we have to do as a movement is transform our anxiety, our anger, our frustration into votes.
Yeah.
And also now as we have like this, being like the only young person in the Biden admin under like in Gen Z, it's like, how do I make sure that our investments are like long lasting, and how do they make sure that they're system wide and not just patching a Band-Aid, but actually getting to the roots of these issues. And I think that's the sentiment around young people has changed, is not just advocating for general climate action, but actually making sure that we really get to the roots of why the fossil industry is sponsoring talks like this, and is stymieing real conversations around what the next decade must look like if we want to have a sustainable future.
Yeah, that's a really important and a challenging question, right? I mean, obviously you need a business presence here because that's where a lot of the change has to happen.
Yeah.
But that can also raise some questions about, whether there's really an aggressive enough approach being taken.
Absolutely.
Sounds like you and your fellow advocates have kind of taken that challenge and that question head on.
Yeah.
What else do you think deserves more attention than it's getting, just based on, you've had the experience of seeing kind of 2 weeks worth of proceedings here. Is there anything you think folks at home just aren't really aware of that is worth paying more attention to?
I think that, yes, there's been a lot that hasn't been talked about because climate is oftentimes seen as like an academic dilemma or a scientific problem, but not connecting it to everyday people and seeing that climate isn't just about our future, it's about right now, and it's about what do we do right now. Like these targets say 2050, and sometimes that lulls people into a false sense of security, thinking we have decades before anything will change, but we're seeing change all around us. And that's why the urgency is so pressing for COP26, because we can't wait for COP29 or COP31 to do something tangible. It's about that progressive, substantive change that we want from this COP right now. And I think also the conversation has to shift around frontline communities. Oftentimes we don't talk about frontline communities in a way that is actually constructive. We only talk about their suffering, and we don't talk about how we have to give aid and how we have responsibility as high emitting countries, as the United States and our administration, to say, hey, we're going to look out for you because you're being impacted first and worst, but you've emitted the least. So we have to be a leader in our example of not just how we act nationally, but how we be the protector and the provider internationally as well.
So it's a great parallel, I think, on the relationship between the conversations we're having domestically about equity, right?
Yes.
And the global equity concerns that go with all of this. And I've been meeting with representatives of some of the developing countries today who are, as you say, I mean, on the front lines in terms of being impacted by it, but also, letting us know that they're going to need support in order to be able to do a part that they very much want to play, but are doing it with fewer tools.
Absolutely.
The clock's already running out on our conversation, but I'm glad I got to spend a little time with you because I think youth stepping forward has really shaped things. I mean, you were talking about the kind of mobilization that has to happen in a democracy, right? And I would hope we can get to the point where, and you see it in some other countries, where politicians across the spectrum are competing to show that they have the best approach on climate.
Yes.
And I think we need more of that kind of competition of ideas that takes as a baseline, right, as an assumption, not the thing that's being debated, but a settled question that we've got to act, and we've got to act fast.
Yes.
And the only debate is over who's got the best plan or the best means to do it.
Exactly.
I think that'll bring us to a much healthier place. But I have a lot of optimism, understanding how you and your fellow advocates are pushing to make that a reality. So hopefully
Sure.
you'll feel that we're doing right by that generation, and we'll have a lot to celebrate by the time we get to the next turn of the wheel in a future COP.
For sure, yeah. We'll
Well,
see you at COP next year. So.
Sounds good. We'll count on it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, really impressed and really enjoyed the chance to talk to you. Thanks for
Likewise,
thanks for doing this.
Pleasure as well to speak with you here.
All right.
Thank you. That was great. Yeah.
Yeah, felt well.